Thank you very much for taking time to join us on this tech update, in particular, obviously focused on Microsoft Ignite last week. So presenters for today, you've got myself, Andy Brown. I'm product director here at Cocho. I look after all of our go-to-market product strategy and technical pre-sales. I'm delighted to be joined by Alessandro as well, who is one of our specialist architects, who is actually going to be able to give you a lot more detail than I can in terms of what was announced at Ignite. So in terms of the format for today, quick introduction from myself and some of the key topics that I picked up on from Ignite, and then a chance, obviously within the framework of what is, we've only got a few minutes for Alessandro to go through quite a lot of content, I think it's fair to say. But yeah, a deeper dive, and then, as I mentioned, questions at the end. So in terms of the big themes for Ignite, it won't come as any surprise, I think, Copilot, there was a lot of news around Copilot, as you would expect from a Microsoft update. I think in particular, we've got some big ticket things there in terms of Microsoft 365 Copilot, Microsoft Security Copilot, and indeed Microsoft Copilot in Azure now, as we're starting to see the implementation of Copilot across a number of the technology stacks. I thought it was really interesting that Microsoft are now starting to really call out Copilot as the UI for AI. I thought that was a nice way of calling it. But also the fact that we're now starting to see the emergence of actions as something to bring forward in the Copilot area, and the ability to have AI agents in M365 and indeed SharePoint agents, which I thought was really interesting, the ability to have a Copilot start to light up in each SharePoint site. Particularly interesting news around Copilot Studio and how you're potentially going to be able to start creating your own agents there. And also Copilot Analytics, which I thought was a particularly useful area to consider, which is, how is Copilot being used and how does that help, make the case for investing in AI going forwards. But I think one of the big themes that we got from this is actually linked to Copilot is obviously around Microsoft Purview. And I thought we've been saying this for some time about the fact that Purview really is one of the foundation stones for a Copilot adoption strategy. And the announcement of extra features, capabilities in the Purview stack and how they relate to Copilot was particularly interesting for us. So data governance really is key going forwards, and indeed is, like I say, a foundation stone for AI strategy in particular. We've seen real evolution, I guess. So in 12 months, we've seen a real evolution now of Microsoft Service Edge offering. And I thought it's really interesting the way that they're now creating something that is designed to be an overarching solution that not only hooks into the Microsoft stack, but is now starting to talk about how you layer in your network technology into that. And I know Alessandro is going to cover that a little bit more later. But again, key area that Microsoft are clearly investing a lot of time and effort into. And then finally, for me, I thought a really interesting one. So the announcement of Windows 365 Link, I thought really interesting. How sometimes things come around. So those of you who've been around in IT as long as I have will obviously remember the world of thin clients and the ability to have less compute on the desktop and push it all into well, back in the day it would have been Citrix, but now we're obviously talking about Windows 365 and the ability to have a very simple device that you just sit down at a desk, log in and go. I think it's a really interesting idea of how they're bringing that to life, and obviously a nice, modern, capable device that will, I'm sure, prove very popular in terms of bringing to life the Windows 365 capability. And yeah, really interesting how things sometimes do come back around. But for now, that's it from me. I'll hand over to Alessandro to go into more detail of what we saw out there.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Andy. I hope you can all see my screen. So rather than a security deep dive, we'll try to have a look at some of the things that we found most exciting or most applicable to most of our clients. As Andy introduced, Microsoft focuses a lot on Copilot and AI, but they haven't forgotten about security, and there was a plethora of announcements revolving around security. So we couldn't present them all. That would be impossible. That's what the Book of News is for. But we'll be looking at some of the exciting ones. So let's start with the first one. Microsoft Security Exposure Management is now in global access. So what's Microsoft Security Exposure Management? Back at the beginning of the year, or actually, let's go back a few more years, for whomever started using Defender back in the MDATP days, at some point we had a little Defender portal, an MD, and then you had a little score, secure score, and some very shy suggestions and links between events. That was for your endpoints. That's what that was. Well, the product has grown a lot over time. It's changed names as it's typical Microsoft fashion, and it started introducing a lot more stuff, an insane amount of stuff actually. So now, instead of being the little endpoint analyzer in the little Defender portal, it's now the Microsoft Security Exposure Management. So every bit of data that comes from any of the Defender products will be and is in it. So Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Microsoft Defender for Identity, Defender for Cloud Apps, Defender for Office, Defender for IoT, good old secure score, still there, still got that name. Let's see how long that lasts. Defender Vulnerability Management, Defender for Cloud, Entra ID, and Microsoft External Attack Surface Management, which is impossible to pronounce as an acronym. So now we got the whole family in there. It's available to everyone that currently holds either E3 or E5 or any of the standalone Defender licenses. And through this, you can actually see a lot of stuff. Apart from managing your attack surface area, you can correlate all the data available within Graph to do an attack path analysis. All these data obviously exist within the portal as a graph, as a dashboard, or you can query it through KQL and advanced hunting through the Defender XDR portal. And further down the line, the data exists in Graph, so your SecOps platform. Next, still talking about Defender, another massive improvement, which is the unified agent. So for, again, whomever started working with Defender a few years ago, we know that originally was the Defender AV on Windows, and with the former SCEP on down-level version of Windows. Back then integrated through an MMA agent, which then became legacy. But as the various Defender products started to grow, and Defender wasn't just the Defender AV, started becoming an EDR and then an XDR solution, products got added. So you had Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity, and all the others. Most of these products require an agent, and that can be quite a troublesome part of a deployment. For anyone who's gone through an MD or an MDI deployment, they surely know that for MDI, you have to do your sensor sizing. You have to make sure that your NNR is functioning and so on and so forth before you can even think of pushing the sensor out to MDI. So Microsoft is trying to make so that we can have effectively one agent and bring everything we can within the Defender XDR portal. So as the next step to do that, we now got the unified agent, which includes identity, endpoints, OT device, and DLP, but specifically now in public preview, although with a little gotcha, which I'll explain in a second. The unified agent for MDI. So appreciate this little animation here. It's tiny, but the point is, if you have already deployed Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, there's no need to deploy a standalone MDI agent anymore. You go to the portal, click on sensors, add your sensor to the domain controllers that you want to deploy the sensor to, and rather than having to deploy an external agent through this fancy portal, it leverages the already existing Defender agent, so your Defender AV that's onboarded to MDE, to capture the data for MDI. That obviously opens the doors to the fact that you can now capture all your identity related data. It goes into the portal we mentioned before, which makes it very handy. And we can start to look at having one agent for the entire Defender family. This is actually very handy. The little gotcha was mentioned before is, although technically public preview is not public preview all over the world. So if you go to your portal and you do not see this tab, it means that you still haven't been rolled in. If you're one of our clients, you can ping us a message and we can have a chat with the product group. We've had it done before for other clients. We can have you expedited into it. Otherwise, you can wait a tiny bit. Really, there shouldn't be more than a month and it will be available to everyone. Again, this is no extra cost. If you already got an MDI standalone license or you're E5, you're using D, that's fine. That works. Nothing on top of that. Next one, stay in the Defender family. So quite a lot of announcements in the Defender family. We thought that this one, which is a blend between Defender for Office 365 and Copilot, was a great one. So you're probably all familiar with the way Defender for Office 365 prevents or tries to prevent malicious mails from coming into your tenant. And it does it through the usual known vectors, so DMARC, spoofing, impersonation, anti-spam, anti-malware, anti-phishing, trying to assess, based on all these hard-coded criteria, what's right and what's wrong. Now, because we got Copilot and the power of LLMs, we can do something more. We can actually have the mail as it comes in. It goes through all those layers we just discussed. We can have an LLM reading it and saying, okay, based on the grammar that's used, based on what it's trying to say, based on the attachment, this looks like it's actually trying to do something that's not right. So MDO can now analyze intent rather than just using binary criteria to determine what's right and what's wrong. The great part is it doesn't just binarily say intent bad, block, intent good, go through. It categorizes that. So for example, Microsoft published that now we'll have categories which are payroll fraud, invoice scams, gift card fraud, corporate data theft, lure-based attacks, task manipulation, and probably a million others that we'll add or they haven't been published yet. So when the intent is gathered, we categorize it, and going back to our previous nice and unified portal, we can go and see, okay, so this month we had X gift card fraud or X5 payroll fraud. That's probably something we need to look at more. Again, this is usable within your portal and it's usable with KQL, so with your advanced hunting. So you want to write a custom detection rule, you want to write a query, you want to automate the behavior, you can. So we got some new ways of looking more intelligently at our mails. The success rate, this has been in private preview since March 23, if memory doesn't fail me, and the success rate for this and the customer satisfaction rate was enormous. Very, very, very good numbers. So now this is in private preview still, but over the next few months, shouldn't be any longer than the first quarter of 2025 is going to public preview for everyone. And again, this shouldn't, and I'll put a shouldn't here, come at any extra cost because Microsoft stated that any MDO customer can use that. They haven't confirmed yet if it's a P1 or P2 exclusive. I suspect it might be P2 because it mentions attack vectors and attack explorer and KQL, which are features that exist within the MDO P2 package. But I don't want to spread misinformation. We will wait for Microsoft to confirm. But for the time being, it's a great new feature that will dramatically help blocking potential threats. Let's go on to the next one. So we move away a little bit from Defender now, and we'll talk about Microsoft Secure Service Edges. Andy just introduced. This is a growing set of products that is really changing the way we treat zero trust and network access in the Microsoft world. I was thinking before looking at what actually has been improved and what's been added, Microsoft has reshuffled names and changed things as they do numerous times over the past few months. So whilst this has been existing now in GA for the past 6 months, in memory doesn't fail me, It's had a few renames and reshuffles. So a bit of clarity. What is it that we got now in this word? So we got a few things. Oh, sorry. Click happy. We got a few bits there. So what's Secure Service Edge? Traditionally, we would have had multiple products, multiple vendors trying to effectively securely taking us to our work, whether that was a physical location or a cloud location from where we were. And we wanted to do it in a way where our traffic was safe and we were controlling applications that were getting used. That would have included different components. So now Secure Service Edge try to be that, your SSE solution or SASE solution, with the various components it's comprised of. So you've got Microsoft Entra Private Access, Microsoft Entra Internet Access, and Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. So these names might not be particularly self-explanatory, but for whomever works neutral vendor neutral terms, Microsoft Entra Private Access is your VPN. So let's try to take you wherever you need to be in a secure way in an encrypted tunnel. Microsoft Entra Internet Access is your secure web gateway. So the security guard for your internet browsing on anything that's happening on the web. So let's try to block what's bad and allow what's good. And your Defender for Cloud Apps is your CASB. So for that data that's been allowed through, now let's see, is this allowed? Is this compliant? Is this an app that shouldn't be used despite not being malicious, but the company doesn't want you to use it, and so on and so forth. So the combination of VPN, SWG, and CASB with the three Microsoft products creates Secure Service Edge, which is been growing and expanding over the past 6 months at the speed of light. So they brought some very much requested new features in. So in Microsoft Entra Internet Access, which is the SWG, the Secure Web Gateway, we now got the possibility to revoke network access in pretty much near real time from endpoints and to inspect the encrypted traffic that goes through. That was a well-requested feature. All of this relies on the client, the GSA client, which already exists for Windows, exists for Android. Unfortunately, it didn't exist for Mac devices yet. And that was something that we as Coach, we actually had to deal with very recently with a client that's very eager to get SSE out for everything. Unfortunately, couldn't due to a lack of agent. Now we finally got a client for macOS and iOS. It's currently in public preview, so it can be used already, should be GA soon, and that's great. And also with the idea that obviously in Microsoft view, we should all have and use everything Microsoft, but then the real world is a bit different. We've got our third-party techs that are great at the little niches and that we know to use and we know to trust. So Microsoft decided to bring a plethora of new integrations to SSE. So now you can still keep using those techs, just integrate them to the SASE technology and see that data through the portal. So we got Juniper, HP Aruba, Versa, Cisco, Aviatrix, Teridian, Checkpoint. They really brought in a lot, and probably the list is not even extensive enough because by the time we're just presenting this now, probably there's more. They keep adding them. So these are all very good. Again, this is at no extra cost. So if you already got your Entra ID P1 license, you can start using this in public preview. This is actually a public preview right now. No extra time to wait. You can go and do it now if you want. You can go and use it. And let's go to the next one. So Microsoft Edge for Business Scareware Blocker. So we thought this is a bit different in the sense that they put in an Edge for Business, but it was a quite well-received announcement as they showed it, and it looked quite effective. So we probably are aware of what scareware is, but in case we're not, there are different ways a website can pose threats. One of the most effective and hardest to detect is a scareware, because they tend to be very short-lived. They tend to change very often. They haven't gotten a hard-coded behavior. It's usually a set of JavaScripts or pop-ups that appear and create this sense of urgency where they're like, your computer has been compromised. You need to pay now. And you try to click away and it goes and flashes red. And you can't click away because it takes over the whole browser. So unfortunately, these tend to be one of those scams for which people for a lot for, because they're terrified, effectively. That's the name, scareware. So now in Edge for Business, they've introduced a new machine learning and LLM, I should have put LLM there, method to try to detect that. So similarly to what we have for Microsoft Defender for Office intent attack blocker, we got the same here. So it learns from a database of website where this is more likely to happen. And then by reading the page, it goes, hang on a second, this doesn't look right. This is not real. This is something else. That's not when the page has already happened and tries to kill the pop-ups. That's before the page is displayed. So rather than getting the scary website and then get everything shut down, you get something like this, where Edge will go, this is what you're about to see. Not a good idea, you know, let's not go there. Mind you, there's the option to overrule that. So if Microsoft LLM and MLs have failed, you can still click on continue and go to the page and have fun trying to click off all the pop-ups. But we thought this was a great addition to Edge for Business. So far, they just showed it in private preview and it works very well. Public preview hasn't got an announced date as of yet, but they mentioned they should be either by the end of the year or the first quarter for everyone to try. And again, if you got an E3 or an E5 license, nothing extra to pay. It is not falling under the scope of Copilot, so you don't have to have a Copilot license. It's part of your E3 and E5. So it's a great feature to have for free. Well, in case you haven't noticed, there's a pattern here. We're trying to pick things that were fancy and nice, but you have to fork out any extra money for. So, and then we'll go to the next one, which is Copilot. We couldn't just not mention Copilot. It's just too much stuff. We thought this was actually a very good one. So for whomever used Copilot before, any Copilot, and even the micro Copilots like Copilot for sales and products like that, you probably know that you are generating a prompt, the prompt access graph, the web, if granted access, and whatever other services for grounding. Then that prompt that's been grounded gets sent to the actual LLM. The LLM receives the response, puts it through graph again for compliance or purview, so to check, okay, I've generated a response based on the initial input. Is this a response that can be seen? So can Joe Blog know what the CEO of Contoso make a year? I don't think they can. So that's why it goes through compliance and purview. And then Copilot sends out the answer. Now, this is the way all the Copilots work. As much as Microsoft has tried to cater for all the scenarios that a company can go through, realistically, it's impossible. We live in a very varied world, so there will be bespoke and niche cases for every company. So Microsoft introduced Copilot Studio. Copilot Studio allows you to use Copilot and all the LLMs available within Copilot with their models, but train them for a task that's specific to you. Like, for example, not spitting out wages of the CEO to your employee or something like that. So what does this add? This adds the option to actually inherit sensitivity labels from purview and retain sensitivity labels or apply sensitivity labels to the output of a Copilot Studio model. So if you create your own bespoke model, you don't have to worry about the fact that you couldn't leverage those purview objects. Now purview objects are integrated exactly like Defender objects, and you can use them in the typical, if you use Copilot Studio, low-code fashion. So if you're familiar with logic apps, for example, exact same way, little graph, move the little blocks, write a couple of things just to reference the object. Now you got purview in there. That's the addition. Again, this is public preview. You can use it right now. This is not public preview in a month. This is right now. And if you already got your Copilot Studio subscription or your Copilot Studio Microsoft Teams plans, there's no extra cost. So it's there to try. It's great. If you use Copilot Studio, I'm sure this was a thing you definitely wanted to use. And surprisingly for myself, because I usually blab on about, I've actually managed to keep it fairly short. So if anyone got questions, by all means, fire them through. I'll try to answer them if I can.
Excellent. Okay, so yeah, we've made it through to the wrap up and questions area. So in terms of a quick wrap up, I guess one of the things that we're starting to really see now is the powering through of the simplification agenda with Microsoft on the modern technology stack. So, when you look at the capabilities across Azure and M365, so, Azure, Entra, Sentinel, Defender, Preview, Purview, all combined now with Copilot as well, is becoming a comprehensive set of capabilities that allow you to securely connect up devices wherever they may be, whether they're directly connected to the internet or whether they are now sitting in your office locations, connecting to corporate networks. All of that traffic can be routed increasingly through the Microsoft security engine, and that engine becomes the front door of access to data wherever it may be, whether that's in Azure or whether you have a multi-cloud capability or indeed your SaaS apps, etc. And this really is now coming to life. We're seeing this increasing, and I think the announcements from Ignite really do add that next layer on top that make this that viable product of a complete capability that you would want to look at to implement into your world. So in terms of potential next steps, if you want to contact us to think about how could you potentially do some of the things that we've been talking about today, we've got a few things packaged up that might be of interest. One is the Microsoft 365 Copilot baseline readiness engagement, which is a bit of a mouthful, but fundamentally that's obviously us coming in and getting you ready for the implementation of Copilot for M365 or Microsoft 365 Copilot. I've got to change the name again now. Data security engagement. I think this is a particularly interesting one. Perhaps reach out to your account manager. This is potentially where Microsoft may well fund some of the work as well. And this is where we can really dig into the Purview stack, understand data security, how to mitigate that, and indeed how that feeds into AI readiness as well. And another popular one at the moment is obviously the service edge stuff. So global secure access, we can actually do a readiness review. We can go through and look at the way your infrastructure is built up today and how potentially you could layer on the Microsoft solutions to fit in with all of that and indeed potentially replace some of the technology there and simplify things. So please do contact us if you want to know more about those. And that is it. We are at the Q&A. So I will open it up, and if there are any questions, please do pop them into the chat.